Hey group. So in this lesson, we're going to take a closer look at meiosis and mitosis because they're both really similar and also very different. And it's really easy to kind of get some of their aspects confused with each other. And they're both just so really important for our bodies. So let's take a look, shall we? So we look at this picture here. Okay, this shows us kind of a really simplified picture of what mitosis is. You see mitosis makes 2 cells, meiosis makes 4 cells. You can even see the kind of difference in chromosome number. But to me, it's too simple. Or I could teach you this, which is way too complicated, right? So this lesson is going to be kind of that middle ground. So I'm definitely going to leave out some stuff because it is so complicated like you see here, but I also want to make sure I give you enough information that you can definitely understand the difference between meiosis and mitosis inside of our body. All right. So let's start off with this slide here. All right, you should have a paper like this in front of you if you're in my class. What I'm going to encourage you to do is kind of fill in the chromosomes along with me. Okay, I'm going to basically give you the chromosomes in each circle, and I'm also going to tell you some details about what's happening in each process. All right, so let's start with this one. So let's start with mitosis. All right, so for mitosis, we're going to do a cell that has just 4 chromosomes, so 2 pairs. And you can see that I've labeled them 1M and 1D and 2M and 2D. So the whole reason I'm just doing that is so we can kind of keep track of them. So really, both of these represent chromosome 1, both of these represent chromosome 2. I just put the M and the D so you can kind of know that's the one you got from mom and dad, that's the one you got from mom and dad, just to, again, keep track of it. All right, so we're looking at 4 chromosomes, 2 pairs. All right, and then what happens is the chromosomes duplicate, which is then when you see chromosomes in that little X shape, it's because they've duplicated. The DNA has made a copy of itself. And you see how they kind of line up right on top of one another. That's important that you have them line up that way, and you'll see why. And in the very end, you end up with 2 cells that are identical to the first cell. Now that's just the most important part, is that mitosis, its whole job is to make new cells that are identical. Okay, so when you get a cut and you need to make new skin cells, you make skin cells that are exactly the same. So you see here, the 2 copies of the 2 new cells are genetically the same as the first cell. All right, now, what we're gonna do now is add in some different stuff to your drawing that you just made. So same drawing, but I'm gonna add here that this is called a somatic cell, or a diploid. So a somatic cell essentially is the fancy name for a body cell. Sometimes I call them just body cells, so skin cells, stomach cells, esophagus cells, things like that. But the official name is called somatic cells. And they're diploids because the prefix di means 2, which means that the chromosomes are in pairs. All right, so next thing we're going to add is that when it goes through this process of mitosis, so you have a cell and then the chromosomes duplicate before the process of mitosis. That's important. They duplicate before the process of mitosis even starts. So they duplicate. We have this here, and then it goes through prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, which we're kind of simplifying in this one little picture there. This is really, I guess, really showing metaphase. And in the end, like I said, you end up with 2 cells that are the same. You have 2 somatic cells or diploid cells. All right, now, again, at any point in this video, you know that you can stop it, pause it, rewind it if you need to rewatch some things, so by all means. All right, but let's move on. So now let's talk about meiosis. Meiosis, before we start showing you all the chromosomes, I just want to basically tell you, so meiosis is so important because it makes our gametes, our sex cells, and it's the only process that makes that cells. And those cells are so important because they make new people, new us. So because they are in charge of making sex cells, which ultimately make new people, it's a little bit different because 2 halves of a cell, or 2 cells come together to make 1 cell. So it gets a little bit tricky. So just watch with me here. Ready? All right, so in meiosis, you'll notice the starting cell is exactly the same. So go ahead and color that in there. So we have the starting cell the same. And then what happens is the chromosomes duplicate again. They make those X shape, but you see how they're lined up a little bit different here. Okay, and I just want you to kind of take a note of it here. So what happens is you have chromosome 1 over here, and the other chromosome 1 lines up next to it. Chromosome 2 is here, and the other chromosome 2 lines up next to it. That's going to be really, really important that they line up next to each other. And then what happens is they split into 2 separate cells. So in this cell, we have a chromosome 2 and a chromosome 1. And in this cell, we have a chromosome 2 and a chromosome 1. You see? We have a chromosome 1 and a chromosome 2. And then Your final cell, a bunch of stuff is happening here. So in every single cell, you end up with one of the chromosome 1s, see we got this red one, and one of the chromosome 2s, we got this orange one. So in each cell, you end up with one chromosome 1 and one chromosome 2, but hopefully you're noticing that you don't end up with both of them. You only end up with half the number of chromosomes. So in meiosis, it makes sex cells which have half the number of chromosomes. Another thing I want you to take note of is that the cells are different. So I know in this diagram we just showed 4 cells, but really this process happens with many more chromosomes and many, many, many more cells. This happens over and over and over again. So all your sex cells are different from one another, which is the whole reason that if you have a brother or sister, that you are different than them because they got a different batch of chromosomes from your parents than you did. Okay, you got different DNA. All right, so now we're going to go to the next slide, which I'm going to add in some of these important details. So you see, once again, we start with a somatic cell, a normal diploid cell. That's how meiosis starts. And then, just like in mitosis, the chromosomes duplicate, make that little X shape. All right. And then what happens is PMAT happens right here. It goes through prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And then what's different about mitosis is that it actually goes through PMAT again. Sorry for the little mess up here. I don't know if I can fix that, but you get the idea. So PMAT, and then PMAT happens again, which is kind of what I showed you in that complicated diagram. So prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase happen twice. And then in the end, what we end up with are gametes instead of diploid cells. And gametes, remember, are haploids because haploid means they have half the number of chromosomes. So meiosis makes gametes, mitosis makes normal old cells. Okay, so now that is the, I guess, semi-simple description of mitosis and meiosis, even though I've given you kind of a lot to think about. But let's just summarize here, shall we? Mitosis, its whole job is to make regular cells that are exactly the same as the parent cells. Okay, these are called parent cells, these are called daughter cells. And then in meiosis, it makes daughter cells that are not genetically the same as the parent cell, nor are they genetically the same as each other. Okay, they make half the number of chromosomes because eventually a sex cell from mom and a sex cell from dad will get together and they'll combine their chromosomes and ultimately make a zygote, which is the first cell of a brand new person. All right, if you have any questions, as always, come see me. And thank you for watching our mitosis versus meiosis lesson.